Believe it or not, this is going to be very controversial. Kids show racism very early.
What are the controversial things that people say about Tai Lopez?
That I'm in the Illuminati. I used to fuck with people by going like this in my videos. That was my favorite hate. Health, wealth, love, happiness. 4 pillars of the good life. People who are victims of domestic violence usually stay with their partners for years. Sat next to Kobe Bryant at the end of last year for a few games, and I said, "Did you have mentors?" And he instantly was like,
"You gotta learn from those who created greatness before."
Tai Lopez grew up in a mobile home as the son of a poor immigrant mother and with a father in prison. After decades of studying human behavior and psychology from the most successful people on the planet, he built an empire worth over $500 million. His primary focus is on the 4 key pillars of the good life: health, wealth, love, and happiness. As one of the original digital influencers,
here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here.
He has consulted some of the world's most popular influencers like MrBeast and the Paul brothers, and impacted millions of students worldwide.
His viral videos disrupt traditional thinking, but his message is clear. Mentorship is the ultimate shortcut to success.
I'm friends with quite a few pro athletes. Chris Paul's a friend of mine. He's made $300 million playing basketball. Chris, do you believe in the power of a coach? Oh yeah, I got 7 of them. And I believe in the power of the guru. I got a guy, my private mentor. When he started with me, he was a computer engineer, making $5,000 a month. And I was like, the reason you've underperformed your entire life is you don't. Now he's making $1 million a week net.
Alcohol will make you poor.
Yep.
Be a drug dealer, not a drug consumer.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
I tell people, if you're spending 2 hours a day looking through your phone, watching social, TikTok, Instagram, you're a drug addict. If you're the one posting, you're the drug dealer. So you can make a lot of money from social media by posting the right content, and you can lose a lot of money by sitting there mindlessly scrolling through stupid videos all day. Average person now under 15 is scrolling 3 hours a day. But you know what? Adults are doing the same thing. So that's why I said like social media is like a drug, because it's a dopamine hit. Novelty, a new clip coming is novelty. That's dopamine, one of the drugs. Neuroepinephrine, these different drugs are released in our brain. So we get hooked on scrolling to the next funny thing, the next crazy thing, and then next thing you know, you start hardwiring your own brain to only have a 5-second attention span. That's the current human attention span. So who else is like that? Drug addicts. They need a fix. Their mind doesn't work right. So the average person has basically become an addict of the algorithm.
I love that.
Yeah.
An addict of the algorithm.
They're
How do you
an addict,
stop
yeah.
that? So if you are that drug addict that's scrolling all the time, how do you stop it?
Well, what I do, I'm scrolling, but I'm bookmarking things, ideas. I've got a group shared chat on Instagram with all my marketing team, my product team. I'm forwarding them stuff. So yes, I'm looking at the algorithm, but it's benefiting me and my family and friends financially by using the algorithm to find trending products.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you said one of your words were alcohol will make you poor. Why is
Yes.
it that so many business people, when they start succeeding, start turning to the bottle or drugs or things like that, when alcohol will make you poor?
Yeah, because humans aren't logical. Whenever you don't understand Earth, just remember, humans are another species of animals. Even if you're religious and you think we're above the animals, you gotta look at the behavior of the average person you'll ever meet in your life and be like, this person isn't really acting like a higher being. I mean, you see that like people who are victims of domestic violence usually stay with their partners for years. It's sad, but it's understandable once you understand that humans aren't logical. They're more animal. So if you feel attached to a guy or a girl and they beat you up, sadly, people stay with them. Why? Because you're not logical. Humans don't have a Excel spreadsheet in their mind where they go, oh, pros and cons. Well, this person, the pros are I have a kid with them. The cons are they're mean to me. That's not how the brain works. The brain basically works on a series of emotional, just like I have horses. Horses are smart and stupid at the same time, just like humans. A horse can be taught I had a horse named Becky. I got it from an Amish guy. She was almost like a human sometimes. You could say things like, oh, let's go ride over to a friend's house. Just kidding. She would like understand that and turn around like a smart person, you know. But you could be her owner for 20 years or 15 years, and if you made a loud noise in the barn when she wasn't expecting it, she might kick you and kill you on accident. That's how people are. And so when you wonder why are people who start to win financially, there was a guy here at the party, he's like, Tai, I started to make $1 million a month, and then I got into like partying too much, alcohol, and like I almost lost everything. Why would you do that? Easy. Sigmund Freud said, you know, there's 8 ways humans find happiness. He wrote a book, Civilization is Discontents, I think in 1923 or something. It's probably the most profound book I've ever read. And he said, humans want to avoid pain and seek happiness. And they seek happiness through 8 ways. One of them was chemicals. So one of them was drugs, alcohol, and then of course now it's the algorithm, which basically elicits the same drug. Sugar is a drug. Heroin is something that passes the blood-brain barrier. Your brain has a barrier to protect it. Only a certain amount of things get through, like glucose gets through, but also crack cocaine. You know, so also these dopamine hits that we get from the algo. So alcohol, the algorithm, they're all addictions now, you know, so you have to minimize your addictions or else they're the master, you're the slave. You want to be the master of your own future, you know what I mean?
So I've got so many different directions I want to go because I love Freud's work as well. I think one of my favorite pieces of psychology is the ego, the id, and the superego.
Right.
What do you love about Freud, and what are some of the stuff that you use in business that are related to Freud's work?
All money is psychology. The wealthiest people in history have been the best psychologists. Right now, the richest man in the world, the top 5, you look, you got Elon Musk, you got Bernard Arnault. Take him for a second. Sometimes he passes Elon. He owns Louis Vuitton. He convinces people through psychology that it costs him $290 to make a Louis Vuitton purse, and he sells it for $2,000. And he's convinced people, if you have this purse, somehow your life is better. But really, his life is better. Because he spends $200 and sells it to you for $2,000. So that's a master of psychology. Elon Musk, you know, he built PayPal. If you look at PayPal, where he built the first kind of set of his wealth, he said one of the things they learned was the virality index. The cool thing about PayPal is when it started in, let's say, 2001 or something, if I sent you $50 by PayPal, I had to make an account to send you money. But then you're highly incentivized to make an account to receive the money because you get an email. Hey, I sent you $50. I mean, that's a good dopamine hit that nobody likes to sign up for something new, but to receive my money, I had to do one. So PayPal went viral. It's called the virality index. There's different words for this, but basically a virality index is understanding psychology. PayPal went from a teeny company to he exited it, you know, for the company sold for billions and he made 130 million in his pocket. So you can't really make money without understanding that you're just trying to persuade people to buy your stuff. That's it. You know, Elon Musk convinced people Tesla's great. Mark Zuckerberg convinced people that Instagram's a place you should spend 3 hours. The Chinese convinced people you should spend 6 hours a day on TikTok. There was a guy in my private mentor program. He came in. I got a 100K program where people work with me closely for 6 months. And he's a young guy. He's like 30. He's got $1 million in the bank from doing e-com and TikTok shops. And he came to my farm and I'm like, all right, mentor session number 1. Let me see your phone. Go to screen time. He went to screen time, is 11 hours on social media.
Per
week? He said, Tai, I'm not gaining any muscle. Women think I'm too skinny. He said, I don't feel good. I don't sleep good. I'm making money, but everything else, I said 11 hours of screen time. He didn't understand the psychology of his own brain. Of course, you're not going to be happy. The human brain, our DNA is not built to stare at screens that much. Human life existence was supposed to be interactive, you know. So Sigmund Freud, the other reason I like Sigmund Freud, I tell people, it's funny that people are so surprised. I've read pretty much all the great classics and the philosophers and the modern geniuses and Nobel Prize winners. I know quite a few of them. I think Sigmund Freud was the smartest person to ever live. So far, I haven't met any, or met virtually through a book or in person, and I've met, like I said, some of the highest IQ people on earth. I interviewed, my first podcast was Richard Dawkins. He was ranked highest IQ human on earth. I've got 2 Nobel Prize winners as mentors of mine, and nobody's like Freud. Now, he wasn't right about everything because he was born in the late 1800s. They didn't know about penicillin. They didn't have decoded the DNA, sequenced the DNA. But he's the most profound person. A lot of people like Jordan Peterson talks a lot about Jung. I don't find Jung that interesting, except on personality. He wrote a book on personality, kind of, that's fascinating. He coined the term introvert, extrovert, but he was really a student of Freud. And, Freud, you were talking about the 3 parts that Freud, the tripart brain. By the way, Freud's gone through, in the last 100 years, times where he was considered a discredited scientist. Then he got his credibility back, discredited. Right now, I just read an article by one of the top neuroscientists, 2018. He said, seems once again that Freud is right, that we have a tripart brain. Now, my best friend, Dr. Germán Garcia Fresco, is a PhD, one of the most distinguished brain scientists. The brain's very complicated. Germán always tells me, we know more about space than we know about the brain. It's very complicated. And he spent 14 years getting his PhD at UNC in a lab under the most famous neuroscientists. So I take his word. I see people oversimplifying the brain, like, oh, here's how it works. Nobody quite knows. But what we know is, by just looking at patterns. So Freud said you have the ego, okay? Which in German is better. He was Austrian/German. He was born, I think, before Germany was a country. But it was the Ich. Ich means the I.
Yeah, it's the true self.
The I. So it got translated to ego. And so people think that when Freud said the ego, that it's like, I'm the best person on earth. That's not what Freud meant. He meant it's the story that you've convinced yourself about who you are. You could almost call it the identity. Then you have the Über-Ich, which is the super, the super ego, which is like societal, what society tells you.
Implanted
the
values.
Conscious. Your dad says, hey, don't try to get too rich. Money's evil. That's like the Uber, the super ego, which speaks into our head. And then you have, this id thing, which I think he called the S in German. And so that's, maybe you could call it the essence. And that is our primitive instincts. For example, children have only a few things they're universally born with. One of them is fear of falling. Little kids have a built-in fear of falling. Another thing, believe it or not, and this is going to be very controversial, kids show racism very early. It's not true that racism is totally learned. Now, it's not racism as we think about it, it's tribalism. Kids begin to fragment at very young age into people who look like them and speak the same language. Okay? Now, you're not born with that like you are, the fear of falling. Some people see the fear of snakes is somewhat universal. Another one is babies are universally more afraid of men than women. And that's because in our instinctual past, men killed babies and women didn't. You read the story. I was just reading the story of Alexander the Great. I just read another book yesterday about Genghis Khan, how Genghis Khan shaped the world. I think it's called How Genghis Khan Shaped the World or something like that. Genghis Khan's modus operandi was, if you didn't surrender, he's going to come in and he's going to kill pretty much everybody, keep the beautiful girls as slave concubines. Most of the men are killed. Native Americans, Comanches, would take little children and bash their head against the rocks, kill everybody. So babies are instinctually this instinct. Babies are more afraid. You'll see that not at 1 month old, but you'll see that pretty early. An interesting instinct, going back to Freud or evolutionary psychology, is babies are, with eye tracking software, babies are universally more attracted to beautiful people. Society teaches that beauty is a construct, that beauty is subjective, that everybody's beautiful. Well, if you look at babies, and I'm talking about under 2 years old, there was no indoctrination. Okay, babies with eye tracking software will fix their gaze. I think it's something, don't quote me exact, 3 to 5 times longer on attractive faces versus unattractive faces. Supermodels, they'll look closer. So there's all of these instinctual essences, that Freud understood before we had eye tracking software. One of my mentors, Matt Lieberman, they've got these fMRI scans, which they're like an MRI, but more for your mind. This is a new development in the last 20, 30 years. So it's pretty amazing that one man starting in 1880s was that genius to forecast what we're still finding out now. By the way, he was pretty effective. If you came to Sigmund Freud and you were depressed, he had like a 99% stop your depression medication. It was called cocaine. He loved to prescribe cocaine, and magically people fucking got better and they came back for more. He discovered cocaine. It had been used for eye surgery. He began to say, well, I wonder if cocaine can also be used when he called it melancholy. If you're a melancholic person, you got to give him credit. It worked. Coca-Cola, where's the word Coke come from? They put a little cocaine powder in the Coca-Cola too. By the way, I've been in Bolivia in the highlands there's a place called Lake Titicaca in the Andes of Bolivia. It borders Colombia. That's where there's a lot of cocaine. You get the bush. It actually is a great medication. The first time I went to Bolivia, I was in La Paz. It's the highest capital city in the world. You're at about, 12 to 15,000 feet? It's like 5,000 meters. And you wake up and it feels like somebody's sitting on you. You feel like you're gonna die. You can't breathe. And so the medication by the Bolivian Indians, they have these Quechua and these different tribes, have a little bit of this powder. But it's not powder, it's have the leaf. So it's an unconcentrated version of cocaine.
Hectic. Do you think, I was reading research recently and I was watching a couple of scientists and they were talking about how the hormones that we secrete or have around us can tend to cause other people around us to sync with those hormonal sequences. Right. Do you think that has anything to do with the babies as well? And testosterone being more of like an aggressive type hormone?
So do you mean babies?
Versus oxytocin?
Women sync up. If you got multiple wives, like Nelson Mandela, his dad had, I think, 5 wives.
Yep.
So he would every week switch huts. They lived close, and so Nelson Mandela said, once a month or so, his dad would come live with his wife, who was his mom. Interesting, in Africa, they don't have the word half-brothers, and they don't have the word stepmoms. So he just had multiple moms, and everybody was his brother and sister. I think, and even they don't have the word cousins. So it's just brothers. So yeah, Nelson Mandela, I guess they say if you have sister wives. I once met a Mormon girl in Utah who her dad had, I think, 40 kids. She grew up in one of the polygamist. It's supposed to be illegal, but there's still parts of remote Utah where you have these polygamous families. And I think she said her dad had 18 or 20 women in a house. They had like a compound. A lot of jealousy, she said.
Wow.
A lot of jealousy.
You don't normally hear that there'd be jealousy in those types of relationships, but I can understand.
Dr. Helen Fisher, she's one of the greatest living scientists. She's an evolutionary anthropologist. And she lived, for her PhD, she went to like Java, these islands, and not far from you in Australia. And she lived with these primitive tribes, and she met the tribal chieftain who had 5 wives. And she said to him, if you had more resources, because there wasn't money there, but more resources, like how many wives would you really want to have? And he thought about it and he said, 0. They're driving me crazy. So a lot of guys are like, it'd be great if I had a big harem. But I know a guy, they bought Playboy from Hugh Hefner, and he once called me as a private equity firm called Rizvi Traverse. They bought Playboy, I think in 2012. And one of the guys worked there. He called me and he said, I'm on a jet with Hugh Hefner. And he gave me the least practical advice. He said, he turned to the guy that I know, I won't say his name, because the guy was married, and he said, never have more than 6 girlfriends at a time. It's a headache. So that's the impractical. If you want the most impractical advice I've ever heard, not more than 6 wives at a time. Tillman Fertitta came on my podcast. I said, what's some practical business advice? He said, always keep $600 million in cash. I said, Tillman, this is not relatable for the podcast. Always give $600 million in cash. But so going back to the question on hormonal syncing, I mean, women do sync their periods. There's pheromones, not just sex pheromones, but there's also like loyalty pheromones. Men who go to war together sometimes form even stronger bonds than husband and wife. Way strong. Almost as strong as like father, son, child, because there's probably some kind of a pheromone that when you're in a life or death situation, you're in a trench, you're dying together potentially, that builds bonds that are, that are beyond psychological. They're probably physical bonds through I just read an interesting book on this subject about the other type of pheromones that are not, when we think of pheromones, it's like every dude I know that's single is like, I'm gonna get this cologne and then I go to a club. I saw one of the best Instagram ads. It was a dude at a club. I don't know if these girls were paid actors, but they were great actors. And there was like hot girls in clubs and it was like, what do you think of when you smell me? And the girls are like, I want to tear your clothes off. I looked down at the bottom, there was a lot of clicks and a lot of views on that. That ad was converting like crazy because, it's a cool thought that you can sync with people through nonverbal ways. So yeah, I do think, now you had a second question, was on what? On the testosterone kind of part of it?
Yeah, it was, do the babies tend to be closer to the mother or women due to oxytocin and then push away from males because of testosterone? Like, is it some sort of hormonal thing?
I think babies can tell. Men look different and they have deeper tone of voice. So babies probably have a combination of things. I think it was the Jesuit priests in the Catholic Church used to say, give me the boy when he's 5 and I'll make him a man. So like 1 to 5, where women dominate and boys get old, especially boys, as they get older, the father becomes more important. Dr. David Buss from Harvard, he used to tell me that a father becomes super important in the teen years because he can pass on his contacts and his Rolodex and his power. You see that with Donald Trump. His father, Fred Trump, very powerful man. And by the way, Fred Trump's father was, I forget the name of the grandfather of Trump, was also a powerful guy. So there's a passing on. Philip of Macedon was the father of Alexander the Great. He passed on his power, his connections, his military, generals he gave them access to. So fathers, it's controversial. People get mad when I say it because they're like, mom and dad are equally important at all times. That's probably not what science says, but I know why people want to think that. And moms, to me, it's more logical that moms and dads are more important or less important at different phases. Men used to go to war. Vikings used to go on a boat, come back for 5 years. They'd give birth. They wouldn't see their kid till they're 5. And yeah, it'd probably been better if the father was there in the first couple of years. But a father being absent when a boy's coming into his own, let's say around 14, is way more disastrous. Fathers are important when a baby's young for protection,
Yeah.
But uncles traditionally did that a lot, brother-in-laws, things like that. It's the whole set of men that gave protection. But only a father is likely, an uncle's not likely to pass on his fortune to his brother's children. So the dad needs to be there. Fred Trump passed on, he co-signed the loan for Donald Trump for $100 million. A lot of people say that they like make fun of Donald Trump for that. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It is. It's kind of cool to have a dad like that. Obviously, that gives Trump an unfair advantage, but if you're born healthy, a lot of babies are born in Africa with HIV. So we get mad when other people have unfair advantages and we forget all the unfair advantages we have.
Yep.
Humans are good at being critical of others and forgiving themselves, unfortunately.
What's been on your mind lately that you've been sort of contemplating? I know you're a deep thinker.
Yeah.
What sort of things are you studying at the moment that's sort of blowing your mind, opening up your thoughts? Where have your thoughts been going lately? What are you trying to explore? And
about wealth? Health, wealth,
general.
love, happiness. The 4 pillars. I try to keep my brain thinking about all 4 every day. By the way, I divide my week up. So Monday, I try to focus more on health, physical health. I read books, kind of take my mind. What do I got to do to keep my body, anti-aging, young? Wealth, I do on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
What do you do on a wealth day?
So I'll be listening to, more books. I'll be spending extra time just like when I'm in the shower. It's like today, focus the mind on things related to making money. So it's more of a conscious habit. Wednesdays, I focus on love, psychology. Love is friends, family, romance. Make sure my social life's good. No social life. I always say, health, wealth, love, happiness. 4 pillars of the good life. I've been teaching this since 2009 when I launched my personal brand. Around then, let's say a decade. Health is the foundation. If you're sick, you won't care about anything else. Wealth is the accelerator. When you don't have money, all your goals take a decade to happen. When you have money, you can make them happen in a year. Love is the purpose of life. We know humans are primarily geared for social reward. You can be the richest man in the world. If you're on a desert island, you won't care, right? You can have gold, be a pirate, shipwrecked like Robinson Crusoe. You won't care because love, friends, family, romance is the purpose of life. And then happiness is the compass. So on Thursdays, I focus on happiness. And what I mean by compass is if you wake up unhappy, it is possible that it's purely biological. You were born with a set of chemical imbalances that make you more likely to be depressed. But it's also possible that you're going the wrong direction and your unconscious mind is trying to tell you something's wrong, red alert, something's wrong, red alert. And one of the problems with pharmaceutical drugs is you're masking the unconscious mind telling you the truth. So a lot of people are unhappy and they smoke weed or they drink alcohol or they're anxious. Well, if you're anxious, you're probably living in too big of a city. People with high anxiety should never live in Manhattan. You'll be overstimulated. Jonathan Haidt wrote a whole book on this where he has a chapter in Happiness Hypothesis, on cortisol levels in high activity and high vibration. Like New York, because of the subways and the cars, it's actually vibrating and you can't detect it with your ears, but your body does. So cortisol spikes. And if anxiety means you're more sensitive to things that are loud, that are disruptive. So that's why there's an example. People go live in New York City, then they don't feel good, they feel unhappy. The compass of their mind is saying, oop, you're going the wrong direction. You're supposed to go north, you're going east. Then you go to your psychologist, and he gives you something to mask it, which then has its own set of, it has its own set of side effects physically, whereas really you should move to Pennsylvania. Go live out in Amish country where it's quiet, where you can think, where you're not being overstimulated. So I think a lot about those 4 pillars. Something that's been on my mind. I think one of the things that I talk about that doesn't click with most people, I don't know if it goes over people's head or maybe I'm stupid and it clicks with me and not with others, is that the main danger in life and the main focus should be on the unknown unknowns. I think Dick Cheney or something has said, there are known knowns and then there are known unknowns. That is to say, there's things we know that we don't know, but then there are unknown unknowns. That is to say, there are things we don't know that we don't know. And if you look at your life, all of your wealth, health, love, and happiness hinges on the things you haven't yet thought about. So for example, I know somebody who's super into health. So they eat organic, all of that, but they drive a motorcycle. And ain't nothing more likely, I've never met a dude who drives a motorcycle that doesn't have a horror story. And so why eat organic food if you drive high speed on a motorcycle every day? Because you might as well just eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you'll be dead. Yeah. So for him, it was an unknown unknown. He's like, bro, why are you care about organic food, which will give you, maybe you'll live instead of 77, you'll now live to 81. But you keep driving, you drive a motorcycle, a bike at, 200 kilometers, 120 miles an hour every day. I'm betting you can be a dead man by 50. So I see that with business. The mistakes I've made, the mistakes I've seen other people make, it's always the unknown unknowns. So that's why an interesting thing you can do with ChatGPT, which I do, if you ever have a sleepless night, you go to ChatGPT, there's a little button here, you press it with the microphone, and you talk for 15 minutes. Hi, my name is Tai Lopez. I live in, this place, and this is how tall I am, this is how old I am, this is who I'm dating, here's my love life, here's my family. And you talk to it for 15 minutes. Then at the end, you say, list 100 blind spots that I haven't thought about. Put them in priority order. And you press this, and you press send. Then you go get a drink of water. When you come back, a robot, which is unbiased, will give you, out of those 100, it's going to give you 20 genius unknowns that you forgot about. I did it for one of mine, and it was like, you have a big barn on one of your farms. Do you have insurance on it? Because it blew away in the 1980s in a tornado. And if this barn is probably worth, it probably cost $200,000 to build it. It's an old post and beam, expensive. So out of ChatGPT, I was like, called the insurance agent. I'm like, do we have this barn insured? He's like, oh, we forgot, and we added it. But there's all kinds of things like that in your life. Like in business, a lot of people are trying to improve their business, but they're in the wrong business. That's a blind spot. Hey, Tai, I call it polishing a turd. Charlie Munger said you can't polish a turd. People call me, oh, Tai, here's this business. This is an action. I've had people give me some of the worst ideas ever. It's like, yo, Tai, like, I'm going to sell horse manure sandwiches. How do I do better marketing? I'm like, you can't. Nobody wants it. It's a blind spot, my friend. You're asking me to improve something that should be annihilated. That's something I've been thinking a lot about. I would say in wealth, the world has, here's the thing about money right now. Never have I seen a time where you can make more money, but never have I seen a time with more competition. So A, you better pick something you're curious about that you can sit there and think about more than anyone else on earth, because that's your best competitive advantage. Elon Musk wins a lot because he's super curious about space. He, in that new biography, I think it's by Ashley Vance, Elon Musk was thinking about building spaceships at 6 and 7. So he's if I decide to go build spaceships, I don't have any curiosity, so I'm going to come in at it like a mercenary, whereas he's coming out of it out of abundance of curiosity. People say you should do what you love. No, do what you have curiosity in. So never have I seen more money to be made by one person. You now have 10 men who have more money than the bottom 4 billion people. People say it's unfair. It is unfair. There's a lesson in that unfairness. And the lesson is that wealth concentrates when there's tools, and there's never been more tools. You can build a website with Shopify. You can build, you can get it out to billions of people with Facebook ads. You can do WhatsApp marketing. It's all the tools are there. So whenever there's a lot of tools, only a few people win. Perfect example would be in the American, in military. So the first time that gunpowder came out, all of a sudden these people started winning. In World War I, the French believed that you could charge with bayonets. And that had been working for the French since going back to Napoleon time. Napoleon, they basically had cannons, then followed by a bayonet charge and cavalry. Fast forward, you had this other war called the Franco-Prussian War, right? Later in the 1800s. They were using cavalry, bayonets. Then 1918 comes around. There's a great book. One of the great books of all time is The Guns of August by a female historian, which is the story of World War I, how it started. When it finally started, the French attacked the Germans, and the Germans had machine guns. Like modern, very powerful. Machine guns were invented in like the 1860s and 70s, but really refined ones that didn't get too hot. And one German guy, there's a story, he was on the line, I think it was called the Maginot Line, or maybe it wasn't the Maginot, maybe that's World War II. But he sat there with a machine gun, and he blew away so many French soldiers who were charging with old tools. Bayonet's an old tool. And this guy had a new tool. And one man basically annihilated a whole battalion. They said the French, there were so many dying, that when they fell, they stacked standing.
Wow.
Because there were so many dead men behind them. And when they finally retreated, usually the Germans would keep shooting at you. He felt so guilty for killing that many men that he just stopped firing. So one man with a tool can take down an empire. And so when it comes to wealth right now, there's never been a time where so few can make so much, but it's competitive. When I started building my personal brand, I remember doing my first podcast, probably 2010 or 11. I was like, I think I'm too late. Fast forward, there's 5 million more podcasts than when I started. That's the estimate on Google. So you can still do a podcast, but it ain't as good as if you had done it in 2011. And if you were doing it now, you better pick a podcast where you have a lot of curiosity. You want to launch a product, you want to launch an e-com brand, you better not just do drop shipping. That'll make you money for 6 months and it'll peter out. But if you drop ship something you really like you're into health and you do health products, boom, now you have a chance. So now you got to pick your edge. Okay, so what's on my mind? Happiness, wealth. I'll let you do another question. This will be too long of an answer.
No, this is great. This is
go
great.
ahead.
When we were here on the weekend, you got everybody to do the 4M motivation quiz. So I did mine. I've done it a couple of times.
Let me see it. Let me see the recent one.
What I wanted to do was I wanted to give you my my personality tests.
Okay.
I'm looking at scale. Well, I'm scaling my business.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm finding hard is people who suit my personality to bring into the team. I want to know how you do it and what your feedback is based on this.
Well, let me see here. So anybody watching, I built a company called 12 Types, like 12 personality types, based on more modern science. If you go to 12types.com, there's 3 quizzes. The one you took is called 4 Motivations. So 4 M's of motivation.
Well, I've done
Let me
all
see
of
what
them
you
and I
got.
have
You
them
done
here,
all?
so I've done them all.
All right, let's look at the 4 M's. First thing I'm going to tell you, you got a lot of ambition.
Thank you.
You're not. well, I'm going to tell you it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
The good news is you got ambition, so you're going to try big things. The bad news is going to be harder for you to be happy. So material things is pretty high, 67 out of 100. Material mating, 72. You have kids?
No.
You should have kids.
Damn, Jess is sitting there like, uh-oh, we're in
Is that
shit.
your wife or girlfriend?
Wife.
Wife. You're not sure you want kids?
I'm pretty hard no on kids.
Yeah, and I'm not. I've never really thought about it.
You should.
Okay.
You need to think harder.
Okay.
Movement, very high, 76 out of 100. Mastery is 84. So you're primarily driven by being well-known, famous, at least in your niche.
Yes.
So, but you're pretty driven by everything. Drug, sex, and rock and roll, man.
None of those things excite me, really.
It's a metaphor. It means drug, sex, and rock and roll mean people they're very motivated by lots of craziness.
Yes.
You need a lot going on in your life. That's probably why you don't want kids, because you think it will hurt your status. I'm going to give you a counter argument. All the most powerful people in the world today and in history had kids.
Okay.
You go to 10 wealthiest men in the world. The average age, I asked ChatGPT, of the 10 wealthiest people on earth, the average age they had a kid by 32, at least one by 32. Some very young. I think Zuckerberg or Bezos was, early 20s. So I think you will activate a different part of your brain if you have a kid.
Okay.
So I think it's actually a super hack that people don't realize, because even if you are selfish and you don't want the kids activate something in you. Rockefeller had kids, richest man in modern history. Carnegie had kids. Elon has 13 or 12. Bernard Arnault has kids.
What changed in you when you had your first kid?
I just think it's an activation of who humans are at their essence. So you become human, right? So it's like a horse. What's the essence of a horse? To have other horses. It's not just to run fast and to have this mane. It's like you become the complete package. And then, by the way, going back to what we talked about earlier, there's probably a pheromone thing that happens that activates other parts of your brain. So in general, it's a myth. People are all saying you should have kids once you're financially secure. I don't see any evidence of that. You become financially secure because you have kids. It might be backwards. People might not understand correlation, causation. But yes, your primary thing is to have that status. Now, if Freud was here, he would be like, the way you're built to have status is to have kids who look up to you as big dad, and everybody loves dad. And so now you've turned it externally to the world, where you're like a teacher, motivational life coach. You're now trying to become father to the world, to all your customers. So Freud would say this is a repressed desire that you're expressing in an unnatural way. So that's why I would say you probably should have kids, because you have that. What makes you not want to have kids? To put you on the spot of not to put you on a... Yeah.
No, I think that another 18-year commitment where I don't get to focus on the things.
But who did you give it to? You mean like your customers or something?
No, I feel like my career at the moment is being really focused in the business, which
Yeah.
I feel is more Michael's mission,
Right.
rather than like kind of putting my own career ambitions on hold.
But just remember, your kids are you, literally. You are. They have 50% of your DNA. No customer will ever have 50% of your DNA. No business. You should think that through. They say the most depressed cohort of humans on Earth is women who hit 50 without kids.
I've heard that.
Now, people can say, I'm the exception to the rule. I will tell you one of the most dangerous phrases that'll ever come out of your mouth is, I'm the exception. So it's like, Tai, I'm going to Vegas to bet. I'm going to gamble my entire life savings on Vegas. Most people lose. Tai, I'm the exception. This is a fool's game.
Yeah.
So you should actually reverse engineer your life off the regrets of people much older than you. It pretty much is the most flawless way to not make mistakes. So you meet a whole bunch of 100-year-olds, you find 10 of them, they're 100, and you go, for example, let's say you're trying to figure out kids. Is your big regret having kids because it kept you from more time on your own? I think out of 10 people, you're going to get 9 that would be like, no, it's actually the opposite. So one thing about Freud, going back to Freud, is that the conscious mind, I'll explain it in Freudian old school terms. You have the conscious mind. You just said a conscious thing, which is like, I consciously feel like I won't be able to devote as much to myself because I'll be devoting to this other human being. Then you have the subconscious mind. That's the part of yourself that under analysis you can figure out. So it's deep, but not that deep. And then you have the unconscious mind. Here, hold your hand up. Are you right or left hand? Right. Put your fingers together. Yeah, see, you're a higher testosterone woman.
Hell yeah, she's.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister.
Yeah. You have higher testosterone, which makes you want to conquer more. So I thought you would have a hand like, that's called digit index ratio. There's about 100 scientific studies on this ratio between that finger and that one. I have high testosterone. It is not what your current testosterone blood levels are, but it's what it's called like in utero, when you're inside your mother's uterus, the amount of testosterone, there's a burst of hormones that comes in. Anyway, it's pretty predictive on a lot of life outcome. It's not 100% though. For all of you who don't know statistics, people rush into the comments. I know a guy who has a... If you take 1,000 people in a group and they have a finger hand like that, you can predict that they have, they're more aggressive in life. They're more entrepreneurial. They're less fear, things like that. But what I will tell you is, no matter how much testosterone you have, how strong you think you are, Mother Nature laughs last. That's what Joel Salatin used to say. You could think you're a badass. I once went in the ocean on a freighter with the Amish to take them to South America, and we got caught in a storm in the middle of the ocean. And if you think you're tough and you think you're a big man, you think you're courageous, get stuck in the middle of a freighter where the waves are coming up 30 meters over you, 120 feet sometimes over you. Everybody becomes a praying man or woman there. And that's like going against our biology. You know, it's like, no, I can live, I have high anxiety, but I want to live in Manhattan because I want my career. Mother Nature's going to laugh last at you, you know? So I'm much more about, like, I call it biological conformation, conforming to your biology. So, like, yes, I'd like to see your wife's.
Bring
Did
it
you
up.
do the 4Ms? Yeah. All right, let me see.
I was going to say, here's my other one as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. You're, for sure, I can tell you're a high dopamine, but also a high oxy. You like people too.
I do. I love being around people.
Yeah.
I love studying, learning, teaching, coaching, and being
You
around
got to sit
people.
on this quiz here. This is the 12 types for career. You got your archetype. Number one archetype's venture capitalist. You're a high dopamine, high risk taker. So this quiz that I helped develop is based around the 4 hormonal patterns: oxytocin, serotonin, cortisol, and dopamine. And then testosterone is the 5th wild card, which is highly correlated with risk taking. So you could be a high dopamine person, but you're not driven by this testosterone response. And so but you're a high risk taker. You got a 72. So yeah, you should actually take a piece of multiple people's companies by running their sales team. Did you ever think of doing that?
No, not really.
You should have.
I always rip up sales though. Like every time I hire someone in sales, I just outperform them, and then I get frustrated. So that's the question that I have.
But that's okay. Elon Musk could be the best business guy in his company, but he's got to have. If he's a 10, a whole bunch of 9s will beat him. Okay, let me see the 4 motivations here. Yes. See, your wife doesn't care much about love and kids. Yeah, but you do. Your wife's not. You're not crazy ambitious either. In terms of when I say crazy, you're more make crazy mistakes probably. Your wife is more measured. You're pretty
100%.
much even keel, except you're under interested in children. Your highest is material things, but it's only a 50 out of 100. So you know what? If you look at your behavior, this is what I was saying, the unconscious mind. The last 16 years, I bet you, just if I had never met you, I'd look at that and be like, you're in a support role.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you're in the wrong place. I don't think you made it. So I heard you say, I don't want to have kids because the last 16 years I've been more helping others and now it's time to come into my own. I don't know if you're going to do that. I'm going to bet money. 5 years from now, you're going to have found your place. Not because you're a woman, by the way, people watching.
Oh, here we go.
There are women. No, there was a woman at the conference the other day that had more ambition than you. So it's not totally a male-female thing. Just you, as a Homo sapien, I'm not sure it's going to work out for you to be leading your whole thing. Not something big. Not something big. You're not going to have the interest. It's going to be like, man, I don't care if it gets that big. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything on your own, but hey, what's wrong with being number 2? I'll give you an example. The richest man I know personally, he's now the 6th richest man in human history. He was number 30 employee at Microsoft. Bill Gates and Paul Allen said, Steve Ballmer, you want to come? We're at Harvard. Drop out of Harvard with us. High risk takers. High ambition. High testosterone. I know people think Bill Gates doesn't have high testosterone because he doesn't have muscles, but he made a $3 trillion company. So who you think got more testosterone? A fucking dude who got steroided up 500-pound bench press, or a dude who has $3,000 billion? You check yourself before you. People try to check me. He doesn't have high testosterone. I'm like, bitch, you know nothing about how things work. People think testosterone is a single hormone, that it just gives you a big jawline and a deep voice. You don't think Napoleon Bonaparte was a 5'5", 130-pound man who conquered everybody? Genghis Khan was a small man. So anyway, biological imperative for you, look back at your past as maybe you were on the exact right path.
You've just fucked me up for at least a week now. She's going to be, just completely silent. Every time I talk, she'll just be like,
No, it's not. Support doesn't mean you're silent. It just doesn't mean you don't see the world as a place to be conquered. Your brain does not perceive the world. I know guys, I'll give you an example. Grant Cardone is a guy I know well. Grant Cardone sees things as a competition. If I'm in a gym and I do 15 pull-ups, his perception is now I have to do 16. That's his built. That's who he is. For good or bad, there's pros and cons. You don't. If I'm in a gym and I do 15 pull-ups, you might be like, wow, okay. You might be, oh, that's great. And maybe you want to do them, but you don't go, that's an attack on me. Grant Cardone, that's perception. That's an attack on me. And that makes him able to do what he does. He's got his superpowers. But in some contexts, that's a weakness. So the world needs an Amish guy. I once asked an Amish guy, David Chupp, I said, how do you, David, live with no electricity, at the top of a mountain, no car, you have 4 horses that pull you and your 9 kids up here, you grow your own food. He was he did harnesses. So he made harnesses. He sold probably $10,000 worth of harnesses a year. That was enough money to raise his whole family because he grew all the rest of his own food. And I said, how do you make sense of the world? And he goes, well, my dad told me it takes a lot of different people to make the world go around. And so a lot of people, like introverts, always see extroverts and go, I want to be that guy. All of them. The universal sign you're an introvert, I can talk to someone in 5 minutes, If you sometimes daydream about going to a club and being able to talk to somebody or commanding the room, you're an introvert. Introverts always want to be extroverts, which is a mistake because there's something called frequency dependent selection, FDS. That means evolution distributes genes with a certain frequency, never 100%. Doesn't make 100% extroverts. It doesn't make 100% type A leaders. You got to have some followers if you have leaders. You have to have some introverts if you have extroverts. So know thyself. And I'm just telling you, you may try, but you got to come back in a year. You're going to revert. It'll revert back to who you are. Anyway.
We'll be back in a year. So this is the final one. Now, this one was
your
from
worldview.
6 months ago, and then this was today.
Okay. Let's look at today. Yeah, so you have high narcissism.
Yeah.
You might too. I'd like to see yours. Has she done 12
Yeah.
types worldview?
I believe so.
Look at the long red one. So here's his. There's his. So you got a 77 on narcissism. By the way, 70 is the beginning of mental illness.
Hey.
So you're just slightly mentally ill. Don't worry, we're all crazy.
I could have told you that.
Cunning, sneakiness, you're not very Machiavellian, so that's a good trait. Courage, ruthlessness, which is a Levinson psychopathy test. You have a little bit of psychopathy, but that's maybe because you're Australian. But not crazy levels of psychopathy. You really like money.
Yeah.
And you really look at yourself and go, I look good.
I try to look good. That's why I train.
But I'm saying the way your brain works, you have 100 on vanity. So there's 7 types of narcissism. People get this mistaken. You're actually not high on narcissism. Self-sufficiency narcissism is low. It's interesting that psychologists classify self-sufficiency as a type of narcissism. So you're okay with getting advice from others. That's
Yes.
a good trait. Vanity, you are a 100. You cannot like yourself physically more than a 100. The story of Narcissus was, a guy who looked in the water, saw himself before mirrors, and fell in love with himself. Said, "Who is this gorgeous creature?"
See, that's why I talk to myself, because I'm like, I'm most interested in me.
Also, authority.
I'm
When you
joking.
think you are smart, you're like, I am right. Exhibitionism. That means you will show off your body. Does he wear tight clothes a lot? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but in saying that, I don't really take off my shirt or stuff like that. Like, I just don't perceive that's important.
Yeah, but if you wear tight enough clothes, people could. That's like women being like, I used to. One time I was dating this girl. I won't say her name. She was from Spain, and I used to do a company walk at my house in the Hollywood Hills. And sometimes, she'd spend a few days at the house, and I'd be like, "You want to come on the company walk?" And she'd come downstairs. And finally my COO is like, "You can't bring her. She's fucking wearing panties on a walk." And I was like, her name was Carmen. I'm like, "Carmen, you won't be able to." I said, "Carmen, what the fuck are you wearing?" She's like, no, these are shorts. I'm like, that is a very generous term. So she was wearing clothes, but it was pretty much no clothes. She'd go on a company walk. People would be like, "What the fuck?" Guys liked it, but who worked for me. But okay. I'm not saying you wear that small of shorts, but
I definitely don't wear that small of shorts.
Yeah. You're Australian, so they got tall poppy. They'll make fun of you. If you don't have high anxiety, you're not super emotional, agreeableness. Yeah, you're blunt.
Yes.
Very blunt. Your main weakness for money is you have very low organization. You're going to have to fix that. Are you organized?
Yes, extremely.
Yeah, well, that's why I said, you guys, don't think of it as he's the leader and you're subservient. Think of it as yin and yang. In this case, you're organized. He's out there putting his face out there. You're secure in love. So on an anxious, avoidant scale, you're more secure. That's good. You get ENTP, so you can debate people.
Yeah, I
argue.
debate myself in my own head. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I love learning.
You really like money. You got an 11 on modesty out of 100.
I like that.
You got an 11. Yeah, so you look at I'm going to tell you this. Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and be like, I look pretty damn good today? For sure.
100% if I've been eating well and if I've had a big training session. Definitely.
Yeah. Yep. You should have been, you could be a bodybuilder. My dad was a pro bodybuilder, man. There's no pro bodybuilders who aren't narcissists, they sit there and they're like, my brachialis is a little small relative to my,
I'm just not as
my
structured.
traps are a little bit, my upper pecs are, you need a little narcissism to win.
I'm not as structured though. Like most of my friends who are highly structured who are
Yes.
like that, definitely
But
bodybuilders.
you have that weakness. I would try to fix that one. 11 is too low. You need to bring that up in the 50s.
Okay.
You got to look, you can never make your weaknesses your strengths in general. Okay. But you can make your weaknesses at least medium, because or else it's like Achilles heel. It's going to be what takes you down. You can't make money with an 11 organization.
My question for you based on that is, what does my team need to look like to be built around me, knowing that...
Support staff, a lot of organized mofos.
Okay. And
Like
how do-
OCD. Like I like OCD people where they're like, this lead is not properly categorized. Like you'll just take sales calls, but you won't leave any notes. You
Yep.
won't put the follow-up date.
Yep.
You won't categorize them as high, medium. You need somebody right next to you that does that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your wife. It can be an assistant, you know?
And so that would be like COO role or...
Yeah,
Yep.
executive assistant.
Yeah.
You also need an executive assistant big time.
Yep.
Big time.
Okay.
Big time.
There we go. That's... So
Are you the COO?
pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. All right, just to finish off, because I know we've got to start
Yeah.
wrapping up soon. Some of the things that I Googled some of the stuff, like what are the controversial things that people say about Tai
Yes.
Lopez? I chucked in ChatGPT.
There must be a lot.
There was a few.
There's hundreds probably.
But the first one that came up, and I want to know how you deal with this, because I get this sometimes as
This
well.
is the first one that I'm in the Illuminati. I used to fuck with people by going like this in my videos, or that, watch, Josh, I can just make this kind of. My brother makes jewelry, but I won't say. They'll be like, this dude's in the fucking Masonic, and then you go like this. That was my favorite hate. Tai is in the... I once did a Twitter poll. Am I in the Illuminati? And it got like 70% saying yes. I was like, bitch, if I'm in the Illuminati, you think I'm posting Twitter polls? That's like the mafia. Am I the Godfather? The Godfather doesn't talk. So yeah, anyway, go ahead.
So these are some of the ones that...
And you get this same one?
I get
Yeah.
pretty
Okay.
much the same as this as well,
Okay.
being in a similar industry. So the first one here was scammer.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? So your first big
Yes.
attack online,
Yes.
how did you deal with it, especially in the media and, Ty's a scammer?
You know, at the end, I'll tell you the internal way and the external.
Yep.
You got to ask yourself, are you really scamming people? If you know the answer is no, that's the first checklist, because then you can sleep good at night.
Yep.
Now, externally, you need to deal with some of it. I've dealt with it in many ways. I've done debates with haters. You persevere long enough, because most scammers come and go.
Yep.
So in 2013, I'm a new face to the world. You're going to get more scammer. Now you come 10 years longer, people are like, oh, okay. So persisting, unfortunately, is one of the only ways to overcome hate. Good example, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He got, people were mad at him how he won the Mr. Olympia. I remember in the 90s, early 2000s, a lot of people hated him. But it's like Gandhi said, first they ignore you because they don't know who you are. Then they laugh at you because you're new. Then they hate you because you're a threat. Then they start to love you. And then last, if you last long enough, you're a legend. Now Arnold's a legend. Part of it's persisting. You can go head on and talk about some of the stuff. Another thing is make sure there's a huge amount of people that defend you. And I get people every day over like, oh, say what you want about Tai. But I got a guy, my private mentor. When he started with me, he was a computer engineer, a dev, making $5,000 a month. Now he's making $1 million a week net.
Wow.
After tax. So if people are at a party and they bump into him and are like, is Tai a scam? He can be like, well, he probably put 40 million in his bank account. And he's been following me for 5 years. So I think at the end of the day, you get enough defenders, you start to win.
So what makes all those, and I'm just going to use the term because I'm Australian, all
Yeah.
the shitheads out there that buy a program for $47
Yeah.
or even if it's $1,500, and then they go, I bought the program, it didn't work, Ty's a scammer, he just ripped me off,
Yeah.
didn't get my money. But then there's other people like that. What's the difference between those that make it and those who don't?
Believe it or not, and 67 steps, 67 videos for $1 a piece. 5% of people got to the last video.
Yep.
30% of people never opened the first video that they paid for all 67. They never got to the first one.
How many? 37%.
30% of people.
30%. Okay.
So what I'm saying is you could teach the greatest, you could have a online training that gives them a treasure map to $1 million you bury in your backyard. And you could sell it to 100 people. 30 of them would never even open up to know there was a treasure map. Only 5% would show up to your backyard and keep digging till they hit it. I'm telling you, it's crazy. So at the end of the day, you got to know. Sometimes I push back on people. Some people are like, I want a refund. I'm like, okay, we can give you a refund, but I got a question. Real talk, man to man. Did you even try? Like, you bought a fucking gym membership. The first 30 days you didn't go once, then you call and say, my body looks the same. Like, if I own that gym, I'm going to be like, I just got one. I'll send you the refund for the month, but I just got a question. You're criticizing my gym. Did you come once? And some people will be like, honest enough to be like, I didn't even come. I guess I don't need a refund. Start asking a few people, did you even try? Just real talk. And about half people that ask for a refund are honest enough to be like, it's probably me. It's probably a me problem. It's always easier to blame someone else.
It's challenging because I've been in the industry now for 20 years as well. And I get there like, oh, here's another guru. And I'm like, I've been here for 20 years. And then the other thing that I get
You know what you should tell them? I love when people call me a guru. Some people say the most important man of the 1900s, the last century, was Mahatma Gandhi. He won independence for India, which is now the largest population in the world. So you could say he affected the most people, got them out from the English colonial rule. And if you read Gandhi's book, he wrote an amazing autobiography. He said, I believe in the power of a guru. Somebody you're accountable. It's funny. I say, do you believe in gurus? No. Gurus are a scam. Do you believe in a personal trainer? You'll get in better shape of when you walk in a gym, there's a man who stands there next to you and holds you accountable. Everybody says yes. I'm friends with quite a few pro athletes. Chris Paul's a friend of mine. He's made $300 million playing basketball. Chris, do you believe in the power of a coach? Oh, yeah, I got 7 of them. I got a nutrition coach who does my supplements. I have a stretching coach. I have a head coach, an offensive coach, a defense. He believes in that. That's a guru. So reverse it on him. Oh, you're just another guru. Be like, hell yeah. And I believe in the power of the guru. And the reason you've underperformed your entire life is you don't have a man tapping on your shoulder and say, get the fuck up. It's 6 in the morning. It's time to go, brother. That's the power of the guru. You don't think it's a powerful thing to be able to go climb to the top of the mountain in Nepal and say, I feel lonely, depressed, and lost. And there's a Tibetan monk there who's been contemplating the purpose of life. And he says to you, my brother, have you tried to meditate? Let me teach you how to breathe. You don't believe there's a power in that? Morons. A lot of the world's morons. Don't worry about them.
I think you probably just wrapped up the last couple of these. So here's a couple of last ones and we'll just combine them together. And then I got one more question. So the last one is lack of proof of wealth, misleading ads, and exploitive business practices.
Yes.
How do you deal with all those?
They all fall under the same thing, dude. It's like, I remember there was a hater guy. We've become friends since then. H3, huge channel. He posted a video, Tai, Lambo, not yours, rented. So I said, come over to the house. He comes, it's a great video. It's online on his channel. He comes there. He goes, I said, he goes, I want to see if you have the title on your name. Brings a camera crew. We go in the garage. I had 6 cars, 2 Lambos, 2 Ferraris, 2 Rolls Royce, and a Maserati. Never get a Maserati, junky car. Anyway, so I go in there. I pull out the title. It says an LLC. He goes, it doesn't have your name. I said, my friend, you don't put luxury cars in your name. You put them in a business LLC name. So a lot of people attacking you is from a fundamental misunderstanding of how you create wealth. People think you should buy depreciating cars. Mansion like this is a $100 million house. I tell people, I leased it. I have a multi-year, 3-year lease with a 1-year break clause. I'm smart. It doesn't mean I'm poor. Trust me, you can't be poor to rent a $100 million home, okay? And I buy farms. Why? I have more curiosity, passion. I want to improve the world through better ways of growing food. I have 4 farms that I do that, and I like to invest my money. This is a tool, this house. I can throw business masterminds here. So some people will go, that's misleading. But I have, on all my videos, I'm like, this is least. You know, I sometimes think, like, forgive people because they don't know what they're saying. I was like that too. Growing up, nobody told me. I never saw a Ferrari till I was in my 20s. So if somebody would have said, see that guy, that Ferrari, he didn't buy it. He's just leasing it. When I was 18, I would have been like, wow, that's misleading. Now I know, oh, that's the smart guy. Remember what Felix said, one of the first billionaires in the UK, the founder of Maxim magazine. He said, my friend, the 3 Fs, if it flies, floats, or fucks, rent it, don't buy it.
I actually downloaded that book last night because I was listening to a podcast and you said it, so I downloaded it. I'll listen to it on the way home. Final question.
Yes.
Tai Lopez,
Yes.
What's the purpose of your life?
It's the purpose of life. For me,
Your life.
So, okay, 2 answers. I think all humans, the purpose of life is love. That's your social life. For me, more granular, specific purpose of my life in terms of giving to other people, this was my motto for my company when I started my personal brand. We spread good ideas. If I could leave one gift to the world, people would say, Tai got ideas out there that not many people were talking about. That made me think about other things, and I became an inventor and invented that. And a guy came up to me yesterday, and he'd made his first $1 million. And he said, Tai, I don't even want to thank you for that. I never read books till you got me hooked on good books. And because you got me hooked on good books, using good ideas from other people, not even my ideas, I made my first $1 million. You know, I bought my mom a house. I did all this stuff. And so that's my thing. I want to spread good ideas that not many people have heard yet. And if you do that, just remember, many people will be critical and suspicious. And every generation, there's been different people who said stuff early and people thought they were insane. So it used to bother me. Now I'm like, this means I'm on track. If everybody loves you, you're doing something wrong, my friend. If everybody loves you, you're not taking a risk, my friend. If everybody loves you, you're not catching new trends. So only people you want to love you is the people you love.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah, you want the respect of people you respect. And the rest, honestly, the best is to not even know who you are. If I could build a personal brand in a laser-focused way where I only show my videos to people who I know will get value and I can never show them to people who have no interest, I would do that. One day with quantum computing, there'll be algorithms where I can just say, send this video to genetically every single person on TikTok and Instagram, and quantum computers will be able to go, they'll be able to archetype and type people. It's called psychometrics, and be like, that video shows to 343,642 people and is blocked to the rest of the world.
Love it. Excellent. Well, Tai Lopez, thank you very much.
My friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.